We're going to go from start to finish and cover the curse of the dust. Now, one thing I learned in church was that there are many, many things that are unexplained in the Bible that church pastors and educators seem to gloss over. They don't really dig into the things of the Bible to really explain what these symbols, events, and things mean. And one of those subjects was the dust and the curse of the dust mentioned in Genesis. Now, what many people don't remember is that the dust, the curse of the dust, actually occurred in two different instances in the Bible. First, the serpent was cursed to the dust, and then Cain was cursed in the dust. So, there is what we call a synchronicity that nobody bothers to dig in deep and explain in the Bible. And so we're going to examine that today. Now, this even goes back to 9/11 and how the two towers were dustified. This was a rebellion against heaven. This is why we saw all the dust. And the twin towers signify the duality. Cain and Abel, as well as the two thieves on the at the cross, at the right and left hands of Christ when he was crucified. They were the thieves of good and evil. This is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The bloodlines, the duality of the bloodlines. So we're going to get into the curse of the dust. We also saw the dust references at the Gotthard base tunnel that we just covered, where they were slapping dust on each other with these like straps. And we're going to start from the beginning, you guys. We're going to start from Genesis 3. Now, to this point, the only thing that I can see, the only evidence that this doctrine could not be correct is Genesis 4:1. But as I explained in a recent video, that passage does not make sense. Eve saying that she got a child with the Lord. How did she get a child with the Lord? That doesn't make any sense. And in fact, the word of God is divine and it is infallible. But the translations of that word is what is being changed. That is what we need to look at. So if someone says to you, oh, you're doubting the Bible. No, you're doubting the translators. I want to see the original manuscript of the Bible. I want to see this passage for myself. Cain was from his father, the serpent, the devil. The first murderer was Cain, and Jesus says this to the Pharisees. You are like your father, the devil, the first murderer. You are of your father, the first murderer. And who was the first murderer? It was Cain. Remember, the fallen ones used to eat humans. This is why God said, do not eat the blood, because the Canaanites were doing exactly that. So God told the Israelites, you don't do it. You don't worship their false gods. You don't eat blood, drink blood. The Canaanites were cannibals, and they were vampires. They drank blood because the blood has the life in it. And God told Noah, do not drink the blood with the life in it. You can eat animals, but don't kill something and just drink its blood, because the blood is still alive. And the cannibals know, and the vampires know, that when you do that, you gain power from it. but it's evil power because it's cursed, because God told us not to do it. So if you're doing that, that's bad. So that's a little more on the whole thing with cannibalism. We're going to start from the beginning with the very first curse of the dust, and that was the serpent. The Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than the cattle and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you shall go. Now, this belly word has references to the womb. Sexual genetic sin, and there was a sexual genetic consequence or punishment from God. The serpent went on his womb or his belly, and the woman has birth pangs. That is a reproductive, sexual, genetic consequence to the action of a sexual sin. God would not give her birth pangs for disobeying and eating a fruit out of a tree. The two don't match. The punishment matches the crime. And we have a precedent for this in the Bible. All you have to do is think laterally and look across all the other times God has punished someone, and each and every time the punishment fit the crime. And Genesis is no different. Plain and simple. Now, God also tells the serpent he will eat the dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. These are the two bloodlines. Again, identifying what the sin was about. The sin was about the seeds, the bloodlines. Why would God say this here if it wasn't about the seed? You see. So, God then talked about conception and bringing forth children, childbearing, birth pangs. And then he tells Adam, because you have heeded the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree of which I commanded you, cursed is the ground for your sake, the curse of the dust. In toil you shall eat of it all of the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the herb of the field. And this is why Jesus wore a crown of thorns, to correct Adam in his thorns and thistles. All right, so we see the curse of the dust, of the ground, the dust from which they came. But this goes on, because then Cain had a curse of the dust. Now, many people are asking, why did God reject Abel's offering? Cain's offering. And everyone's asking, is it because Cain did something wrong? No, because both of them gave their first. It says here, Cain was born a tiller of the ground. He was born out of the dust, the ground, after the sexual sin. And Cain brought his first offering, but it was of the ground, of the cursed dust. Why? Because the serpent had just been cursed to the dust. And Abel bought the flock of the fat. Now, what I want you to recognize here is that they both gave their first offering, because it says also Abel brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. So they both offered the first. So to this point, there's no reason, there's no other reason why God should reject Cain's offering. But he did because he had to, because his offering came from his father, the devil. The sacrifice, Cain's sacrifice, was from the cursed dust of the serpent. It represented that. And Abel's offering represented the very same type of offering that the Israelites, the pure seed from which Jesus would come, their sacrificial system was based on these lambs for sin. And therefore now you begin to see clearly why God rejected Cain's offering. Because his fruit, God said, you will know them by their fruit. His literal fruit came from the tainted dust. And he was of the tainted dust, the curse of the dust. Now, Cain was punished. But first, God said, before Cain killed his brother, why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? In other words, your face. Why are you sad? Why are you angry? If you do well, will you not be accepted? You see, the light and dark side within him. And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door. Sin lies at the door because he has the serpent inside of him. Why wouldn't God have had this talk with Abel? They're both brothers, right? If they were both from Eve, wouldn't God be talking to both of them? Cain had not sinned yet. He had not killed his brother yet when God had this discussion with him. All he was mad. But God has to have this talk with him. He said that sin's desire is for you. He was predisposed to sin, but you should rule over it. The inner struggle. The inner struggle. Many of you have that inner struggle in your life. Wanting to do good, but sin is always crouching at the door, always right outside the door, waiting to drag us back in to the dark side. Then Cain went on to kill his brother. And Cain says, I am not my brother's. He goes, am I my brother's keeper? In other words, is Abel really my brother if I'm from a different father? Do you see how now this is not a leap? But because we've been brainwashed into a paradigm of how the story goes, we accept it. So here's the punishment of Cain. This is the voice of your brother's blood cries out for me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. So it was like a double curse. So he went from the ground's cursed to now you're not going to get anything out of it. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on earth. But God still made a way out for Cain. Cain says, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. And it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. But then God protected Cain, and he said, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. Why did God protect Cain? Because Cain was half human. Cain was half human, and God had to make a way out for him. Now, there is erroneous information out there saying that Cain didn't have children. When someone says that, and you see them say that, that's a lie. Because it says here in the Bible, Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. Now, this isn't Enoch. This is a different Enoch. There's two Enochs in the Bible. Cain built the first city, and he called it Enoch. Enoch. Wow. I was looking at this and going, wow, does that kind of sound like New York? Enoch, New York? Enoch? I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. So, and then many of you have pointed out that the bloodlines at this point separate. And Enoch or Cain is not counted in the line of Adam when they look at the bloodline of Adam. That tells you that they're two separate bloodlines. Abel's sacrifice matched the Israelite sacrifice system with lambs. That tells you something, because the Israelites rode the pure blood. Because from their tribes, one of the tribes was Judah, would come Jesus' bloodline. Adam, David, Solomon, Nathan. Now, Abraham's in here somewhere. So it goes Seth, Enosh. Let's pull this up. View image. Seth, Enoch. Solomon's in here. Judah, Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, Terah. This is the bloodline of Christ. Seth was included in the birthright. Yes, because Seth came from Adam, because Eve again became pregnant. She became pregnant again after Abel was killed. Seth then reignited the bloodline from which Jesus would come. What we're here to do today is to talk about Pan, the cave of Pan, basically the birthplace of Pan. And the birthplace of Pan is at the foot of Mount Hermon. So we're going to get into this area that is in Israel. Now, what you're looking at here is an actual map of this grotto, they call it, Caesarea Philippi. This is actually the name of this place where they call it the Cave of Pan. Now, there are many caves of Pan. Here are some of them around the world. There's one in Athens, many of them, and most of them are actually in Greece. It looks like they're naming about 8 or 10 different caves of Pan. And one of them, the only one that's not in Greece, is in Israel, and that's the one we're going to look at today, called Banias. This is Bahias, and I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. And this is basically the birthplace of Pan. It says here is the Arabic modern Hebrew name that developed around a spring once associated with the Greek god Pan. It is located at the foot of Mount Hermon, north of the Golan Heights. Mount Hermon is a very bizarre place because we are told in the book of Enoch that the fallen angels descended at Mount Hermon. Okay, this was the point at which they entered into the material realm and took for themselves wives, right? And that this is where the incursion of the fallen angels began. The bloodlines mixed way back in the beginning of time. Now, we're going to get into Mount Hermon, even though this Pan's grotto is at the foot of Mount Hermon, where the spring comes out. It is fed. These are the headwaters of the Jordan River, okay, which is a very important river that goes to the center of Israel. Jesus was actually at this spot. We're also going to get into that later in the show. Archaeologists uncovered a shrine dedicated to Pan and related deities. We're going to look at these shrines where the statue of Pan once stood. The ancient city was mentioned in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark by the name of Caesarea Philippi. This is what I was just telling you. And we get an entry from Jesus himself. Here it is. It says, Jesus sent him home and said, do not go back into the village. Then Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he questions his disciples, who do people say I am? They answered, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others say you are one of the prophets. So Jesus was at this location with the disciples. Why would he pick this place to ask them who he is? Well, this is interesting because any other time in the Bible where Jesus used the word I, talking about himself, we see that the Greek word for the word I, describing himself, is actually EYE in Greek. Mount Hermon not only is the place where these fallen angels came down, but it is also the place where the highest ancient temple exists in the ancient world. 9,000 foot elevation this temple existed, which is appropriate. So when he says I, this is the word that he uses, the word EYE. As you can see here, it's repeated a couple different times. EYE, and it's actually a W, but if you rotate this to the right, it looks like the word I, like the eye in your head, the noun, instead of the pronoun I. Jesus said, "Blessed art thou, Simon Barjona, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven." And this is key, because most of us have to see the flesh and blood, the anatomy, to have the truth revealed to us. But this is it. This is the site. We're going to look more closely at Mount Hermon. Okay? All this is connected and related. Let's go back up here. But here is the legacy of Pan. We're going to keep reading in a minute, but I just want to make sure that you guys understand what we're dealing with here. Apparently, this is a well-traveled place to come see in Israel. Now, as we keep reading, the once very large spring gushed from the limestone cave, but an earthquake moved it to the foot of the natural terrace, where it now seeps quietly from the bedrock with a greatly reduced flow. From here, the stream called Nahal Hermon in Hebrew flows towards what once were the malaria-infested Hulu marshes. So here's the history of Pan. It says here, the pre-Hellenistic deity associated with the spring of Banyas. Now this is Mount Hermon, where the fallen angels came. And this particular Wikipedia article talks about all these temples. There are many, many temples in Mount Hermon, okay? Let's look at them. It says the temples of Mount Hermon are around 30 shrines and Roman temples that are dispersed around the slopes of Mount Hermon in Lebanon, Israel. Again, these are the higher elevations above Banyas that we just looked at, where Pan originated. It says discovery of the Hermonian temples in rural villages began in the 19th century with surveys by Edward Robinson and Sir Charles Warren. 10 sacred sites were also documented by Daniel Crencher. It says there is a sacred building made of hewn blocks of stone on the summit of Mount Hermon, known as Qasr Antar. It was the highest temple of the ancient world, sitting at 9,232 feet above sea level. It was documented by Sir Charles Warren in 1869. Warren described the temple as a rectangular building sitting on an oval stone plateau without roof. He removed a limestone stele from the northwest of the oval, broke it into pieces, and carried it down the mountain and back to the British Museum, where it currently resides. An inscription on the stele, translated by George Nickelberg, reads, "According to the command of the greatest and holy God, those who take an oath proceed from here." What oath could they have been talking about? Well, they tell us. They connected the inscription with oath taken by the angels under Simjaza, who took an oath together, bound by a curse in order to take wives in the book of Enoch. Hermon was said to have become known as the Mountain of Oath by Charles Simon Pinot. The name of God was supposed to be a Hellenized version of Baal or Hadad, and Nicholsburg connected it with the place name of Baal Hermon, Lord of Hermon, and the deity given by Enoch as the Great Holy One. You guys, Baal simply means Lord, but it represents all of the false gods, false deities in the Bible. There are many Baals in the Bible mentioned. The point is, it is the symbol and representation of false gods mentioned throughout the Bible. So now you know the truth. I discovered that Pan is Cernunnos. Yes, Pan is Cernunnos. Pan is Cern. Cern is Cernunnos. Now we got some clues to this when we saw the opening of the longest base tunnel in the world earlier this year. It was called the Goddard Base Tunnel. Went through the Alps, and we saw the eyes of Molech coming through, right as they dug these two tunnels that look like the owl eyes. The horned god, as it says here, this is part of the Wicca. This is witchcraft. This is Pan. Here it says right out that Pan is Cernunnos, the horned god. Okay. Now, what the pagans will tell you is there's nothing wrong with this. This is simply worship of the wilderness. There's nothing wrong with this. This is what they will tell you. Okay. But nothing could be further from the truth. There was human sacrifice involved with this. Okay. It says here, the horned god Pan, removed from the classical context of the writing of the Romantics of the 18th century and connected with their ideals of pastoral England. See, this is the lighter version of it. What they don't tell you is that all of this is steeped in much deeper and darker occult. Here, they draw the association, the horned god, stemming from the merging of Cernunnos, a horned god of Celts, with the Greco-Roman Pan, Faunus. So we see that they are one and the same. And Cernunnos is Cern. And if you think that's a stretch, understand that many of these LHC rings, okay, these colliders, that many of them are named after gods. Atlas, there's Petra, Hera. These are all names of LHC programs all around the world. So it's not a stretch to think that CERN stands for Cernunnos. So let's keep this going, because we saw this imagery repeated with the Goddard Base Tunnel opening. Here it is. They have all these people cruising around with horns. This is it here. They all had these horns on. These were like the virgins. I think there were 12 of them. It was a man's body with women's breasts. Okay. And of course, that is the anthropomorphic Pan. He was sexless as well. This guy busts out. This is toward the end. They show him on the screen, and then he actually shows up. Okay. And when you look at images of the Goddard Base Tunnel, here it is here. Let's look at this one. Make sure you guys can see this. Here's him on the screen. They had this giant screen. They actually at one point showed the human eye. Okay. That's them mocking Christ. Horned God. Here are the eyes of Molech. These are the stars spinning in the night sky at the equator. This is exactly what it looks like. With time-lapse photography, looks like the eyes of an owl. They do that on purpose because this is our prison. We can't see heaven in its brilliance. It's blocked out by the darkness. Since the beginning of time. That is what we're dealing with. Now, what does this mean? Baal worship. Horned gods. It means that the people that run this world, this is what they worship. They worship the material realm. Because this is where they're going to get the bang for their buck. They get to live like kings in this reality. Okay? But those of us who keep our eyes fixed on heaven, we have a very different reality. We may be broke, we may be poor. We may have no power in this reality, in this material realm. But our eyes are fixed on heaven. Our treasure is in heaven. Okay? That is where our treasure is, and this is where we keep our eyes fixed. It also was at 33, roughly 0.33 degrees. It's not exact. 0.33 would be 20 hours here, and it's 24.
so it's close but not exact, but it is at the 33-degree north parallel. Now, so we have the highest temple and the highest UN outpost, as it says here. Now they're calling this Hermon Hotel, HH88, and it is the highest permanently manned UN position in the world. Now, thanks to a subscriber who sent me this wonderful panoramic view of Mount Hermon. Now, this is some kind of a cross that they put here. I'm sure there's more information on that. Take a look at this. Now, the subscriber is thinking that this is the temple, and that is a good guess. Just to the left of the UN base, the highest manned UN base, next to the highest temple. That is just chilling, you guys. It's chilling. Looks like we have some kind of monument here. Looks like a bomb that wasn't exploded, and then they put, looks like, some concrete around it and some sort of a thing that they do. Of course, we see some visitors here. Now, curiously, there are virtually no pictures of this temple anywhere, even though it is the highest temple in the world. There are no close-up pictures of this temple, which to me is very curious. Highest UN base, there's a million pictures. The Hermon Hotel. Highest temple, no pictures, or very few, or pictures from far away. Now, we're going to take a look at this on Google Earth and map this and see if we can't get a precise location for it. What's curious is that very close to this temple, we have an 8,888 foot elevation. It's within yards of the proposed site. This is a book that was sent from another subscriber talking about the site, and I actually have a diagram. Cazarantar is the name of the actual site that had the inscription, and they draw a diagram and they found a hidden chamber underneath it, and that's what we see here. But again, throughout all of these, no coordinates are given, no exact coordinates. Now, I did some math on some of the measurements that they did in this particular study, and it was pretty cryptic. It says here 10.1 by 6.8. That's 33.13 by 22.30 when you convert that to feet, which is 3322.
And I've got an update for you guys on Game of Thrones. Got into this series and basically been watching it straight through. I think I'm on season 6 at this point. I've got some screenshots pulled up for you guys. Also found some pretty revealing stuff on Jared Kushner, his family lineage, the 666 Fifth Avenue address that he owns, his real estate firm. And we're going to dig in a little deep about the son-in-law of Donald Trump. So those are the two things we're going to cover tonight. Glad you guys could join. Let's let if you guys filter in. And maybe we'll cover the Jared Kushner stuff first. Let's see. Let's pull these slides up here. Glad you guys could all join in tonight. Well, let's see here. Game of Thrones. Now, Jared Kushner, as you guys know, is the son-in-law of Donald Trump. And I found some information regarding the 666 Fifth Avenue address. These are some Game of Thrones stuff we're going to cover a little bit later. This is the scene. This is Leonardo DiCaprio, and he's sitting across from Matthew McConaughey in this 2013 film. They're having lunch at the top of 666 Fifth Avenue, owned by Jared Kushner. Now, let's look at the timeline for this and see when he actually purchased these properties. Let's see. Let's pull up 666 Fifth Avenue. Now, you're probably wondering why this is important. Now, we've heard Donald Trump go on and on and on about how much support he has for Israel. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to demonstrate that to you. There's a reason why he is supporting Israel. And it all has to do with Jared Kushner and his family lineage. We covered a little bit of this on Underground World News last Friday night. But I wanted to kind of do our own live show on this to show you guys what's going on. These people are all in bed together. They marry within families. And this just never stops. We're not in this club, and so we'll never understand how alliances are formed, how bloodlines are kept, how strategic marriages happen to better or further these family goals and plots and subplots. Now, this is 666 Fifth Avenue. W's covered this, and he's talked about, the obvious in your face, 666, right? Mark of the Beast. But that this is owned by Kushner Realty. Let's look in here. Let's do a search on this. Kushner, here it is, Kushner Properties. Let's see when he acquired this. 2007. So when the film Wolf of Wall Street came out, Kushner had already owned the property. Now this is creepy because this is Jared Kushner. Now look at this. Look at the side by side on this. Did I pull that out? Oh, yeah, there it is. This is just weird, right? I mean, yeah, they got different color eyes and everything, but there's somewhat of a resemblance. But we're going to get into what all this means. Now, in this scene, basically, Leonardo DiCaprio is being taken to task. He's being showed the ropes as a stockbroker. Now, I did a video on Trump the Wolf, and I'll pull that up in a minute. But isn't it weird how we have the Wolf of Wall Street, and then we had covered Trump being the wolf in a video before I'd even heard or learned about the 666 Fifth Avenue. Now, this is what Matthew McConaughey is telling him. He's showing him the ropes. He says, name of the game, move the money from your client's pocket into your pocket, right? But if you make your client's money at the same time, it's advantageous to everyone, correct? That's what Leonardo DiCaprio says. And Matthew McConaughey says, no. Number one rule of Wall Street, nobody, I don't care if it's Warren Buffett or if you're Jimmy Buffett, nobody knows if a stock's going to go up or down, sideways or in circles. Or least of all, stockbrokers, right? It's all fugazi. You know what a fugazi is. Fugazi, it's a fake. Fugazi. It's wazy, it's woozy. It's fairy dust. It doesn't exist. It never landed. It is no matter. It is not on the elemental chart. It's not real, right? Right. Stay with me. We don't create as HIT. We don't build anything. No. So if you got a client who bought stock at 8 and now sits at 16, he's all happy. He wants to cash in, liquidate, take his money and run home. You don't let him do that, okay? Because that would make it real, right? No, what do? You get another brilliant idea, a special idea, another situation, another stock to reinvest his earnings, and then some. Now, why am I reading all this? Is Matthew McConaughey is describing to Leonardo DiCaprio at the top of 666 Fifth Avenue of how the stock game works. Why am I talking about this? Because the stock game works almost exactly as the real estate game. And so what you're really looking at here is Jared Kushner at the top of his own building that he owned a few years earlier. And they're describing the buying and selling of property instead of stocks. That's what I believe that they're depicting here. Now let's look into this a little bit more. Real estate firm. First, I want to pop back in the chat here. Why is this doing this? My screen's acting weird. All right. I see you guys in here in the chat. Right on. Welcome to the show. All right. So 666 Fifth Avenue, Kushner Properties. Let's take a look at Kushner Properties and see what this is all about. Privately held company 32 years ago, Charles Kushner. Now, this is interesting. Charles Kushner is obviously the son of Jared Kushner. This is where things get spooky and weird because his father actually got into a little bit of trouble. This is him here. Let's see here. Son of, where does it talk about his family history? Here we go. This is Charles Kushner. Apparently a convicted felon. Did some time. Real estate developer. In family business with his son-in-law of Trump. Convicted of illegal campaign contributions, tax evasion, witness tampering, and served in federal prison. After his release, he resumed his real estate career. Now, what was he doing? He actually tried to bribe someone by hiring a hooker to blackmail somebody. It's typical Illuminati tactics. They get you a compromised situation, they take pictures, and then they blackmail you and threaten you. It says here, what does it do? I think they actually describe it. Witness tampering charge arose from Kushner's act of retaliation against William Skolder, his sister Esther's husband, who was cooperating with federal investigators. Kushner hired a prostitute to seduce his brother-in-law, arranged to record an encounter between the two, and had the tape sent to his sister. Sentenced to 2 years in prison, served 14 months in a federal prison camp. So, these are the people that are surrounding Trump. Now, it goes deeper because also this man said he claims to have been a survivor of, what does it say here? Holocaust survivor. This is the Jewish aspect of this, the Israel aspect of this. It says here, his maternal uncle died in a concentration camp during the Holocaust, is what they're saying here. And later on down here, it talks about all of his affiliations with many of these Jewish groups, which doesn't make a person a bad person, but it explains maybe beholden, or at least when you surround yourself with people, idea of what this person may be like, and maybe why he has sympathies to Israel, as you can see here. So I wanted to cover that. This is the Wolf of Wall Street, the Jared Kushner and Charles Kushner connection. Let's take a look here. Let's close this. Now we're going to get into Game of Thrones, and I'll show you guys what I found. Pretty crazy stuff. More stuff that we've covered on this channel. And one of them got right by me. I was kind of shocked because normally I catch this kind of stuff. Check in with you guys real quick first. Make sure everybody's in here. Okay. So let's get started on some of these slides. I'm going to blow this up so you guys can see a little better. So we talked all about this upside down crucifixion, okay? And we talked about how disciples, or there was like 3 or 4 disciples that were crucified either on this X, and a couple of them were crucified upside down. I think we might have covered that already. Now, this is weird because this is the tree that we talked about. Remember we talked about the magnetic field and how trees and their roots form this, the owl eyes, right? Well, in this particular episode of Game of Thrones, they go down underneath this tree here. This is the tree here. So you see the above and you see the below. So they're down here in the roots. And here you see the magnetic field. The Taurus Field is what they call this. And it is a Coriolis effect. Okay, it's basically you get this infinite spin. Now there's a light side version of this and there's a dark side version. I believe they're depicting the light side version here. And then under the ground, this is like the dark side, right? You know them by their fruit. What does that really mean? Well, what does this look like? It looks like an apple when you split an apple open. It's a Taurus field. All life manifests into the Taurus field. And you know them by either the dark fruit or the light fruit. Okay? What is your fruit like? Does it look like this? Or does it look like this? And so what you have here is the magnetic field. What is a magnetic field, Casey? Well, you get a current. It goes through up and through the middle, comes out around the outside, and spins back through the middle. And it kind of does like the spiraling effect. So it's not perfectly vertical here. It like spirals. It comes in and goes out. And through its own momentum, it's infinite. This is a magnetic field, okay? So they're depicting that. This is the same tree. They're showing the above and the below. And I don't know why they actually look for this tree in the episode. I think it's like this tree has some kind of secret power. In this root system, they're actually able to go back in time. They do this, like they have these visions. So they're laying in and amongst these roots, and they can look at past lives and people's lives and basically be standing right there looking at the situation as it's unfolding when they go into this alternate state of reality. Now, we talked about the 7-pointed star and the septum and the 7 kingdoms of Game of Thrones. And they mention the number 700 many times as well. It has turned out that the 7 has become a theme throughout the series. I think it started in about season 3 or 4, and they haven't stopped talking about it since. And in this episode, they come right out and say it, the 7-pointed star. In this instance, they're talking about a holy text. And this is their religious book. Well, we broke down the 7-pointed star, and I showed you guys what it meant. I showed you that the creator of the gorillas was wearing a black 7-pointed star around his neck. I showed you that it is that it was Aleister Crowley's religion that he worshipped was the 7-pointed star. And still to this day, I got people defending the gorillas and defending the creator and defending the 7-pointed star. And I just don't know how you can do that with all the evidence out there. Now, in the opening, the introduction of Game of Thrones, this is what I missed. I couldn't believe that I missed it because this is everything we've been talking about. This is the iris. What you're looking at is the eye. And as they pan over the 7 kingdoms, they show this eye device. It looks almost like it's kind of what do they call these? Those devices that are in equilibrium. They're like balanced and they rotate around each other, like rings within rings, right? And then they show inside of it this iris and the light in the eye. Okay, and this thing is actually what is like observing the 7 kingdoms. It's flying overhead, almost like the sun in the sky. Here's another angle of it as well. Make no mistake, what you're looking at here is the iris. This is it right here, okay? It's floating around above this map in the introduction to each of the episodes. They also show us the serpent wrapped around the pole. This is the bronze serpent spoken about in the book of Genesis, or maybe it was Exodus, in the Bible. And I told you guys all about what that meant in a previous episode, or a previous decode. We tore apart the instance in the Bible where Moses was told by God to raise this bronze serpent on a staff. And I told you what that really meant. Okay. We'll do a quick review of it as soon as I pop into the chat. Make sure you guys are still in here. This is when they like to disconnect us when we get going, right? Gyroscope. Thanks, Andy. Sometimes I don't have the words, right? Serpent on the pole. Okay. Now, you're not going to hear this anywhere else because many people that are religious can't open their minds. They only regurgitate what they're told by their pastors and religious doctrines instead of thinking for themselves, allowing the Holy Spirit to open their mind, okay? In fear of being called a heretic or in fear of being called an apostate or a Gnostic, right? But I can tell you right now that this bronze serpent, bronze is 88% copper. Bronze is 88% copper. Copper is the blue bloods. What are the blue bloods? The blue bloods is the line of Cain and the line of the Egyptians and many other bloodlines that fought against the holy bloodline of Christ's forefathers. Okay, Abraham, Solomon, was it Jacob, David, and the bloodlines go all the way back to Adam, to Seth. Okay. Now, and Shem was the one that carried over that bloodline into and after the flood. So why did God make them build this copper or bronze serpent and wrap it around a pole? Because he was foreshadowing Christ being crucified. Casey, what are you talking about? How can you compare a snake to Christ? Well, Christ made the comparison himself. Yes, Christ made the comparison himself. He said, just as Moses raised up a snake in the wilderness, the Son of Man will be raised up and save the world. That's what the verse says. So what do we have? We have the dark side version, and we have the light side version of Christ. We have the holy seed versus the dark seed. You see the enmity that God talked about in the Bible, all the way going back to the book of Genesis, the enmity between these two seeds. And now are you starting to understand what this really means? Okay. Is the battle of the century. It is the big white elephant in the room, going back to the beginning of time. It always has been and always will be. And no matter how much religion tries to sweep this under the rug, they cannot escape this, because these serpent seed are the ones in control. Now, why would God have them erect a serpent on a pole, bronze serpent? He did that because the Israelites were complaining. Oh, we have to eat manna. Oh, we're tired of eating manna. At least in Egypt we had meat. Oh, we're in the wilderness, wandering for 40 days and 40 years. And God said, okay, you want to keep complaining? I'm going to show you what you came out of. This is the serpent seed. This is what I delivered you out of. This is why he had Moses raise this serpent on the staff. And they were commanded to look at this serpent basically as a punishment, like sticking your nose in the corner. And if they did not look upon it, then they would all die. And that is the truth and the secret behind this verse in the book of Exodus. And when the Holy Spirit revealed to me this truth, I couldn't believe it, because I had not heard this explanation before, but it was revealed to me. And I was like, wow. So that is what this means. Serpent versus the Christ seed. They were raised on this pole. Christ was raised on the cross, you see. And I think this was actually a cross too. Here they have it just as a stake, but I think the book of Exodus says that you raise the serpent up on a cross, or not a cross, but like but it could add a crossbar on it. We don't know. Now, let's make sure you guys are still here. Cool. Right on. Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. All right, let's keep going with this, because there's more to this here. And I'll do kind of we'll do open question and answer as soon as I'm done with this. Now, here you go. The banner rotates around and it rests right in the center of the iris. This is the iris, okay? Of the eye, of that eye thing. Gosh, I already forgot the name of it again. So that's it, you guys. That's what's going on with Game of Thrones. That's the update.